Hello and welcome. I'm Sarah Mueller, a reporter with Forbes, and today I am joined by Tyler Blevins, who is also known as Ninja on platforms like YouTube and Twitch. Tyler, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Sarah.
Now, I want to give a quick overview of your resume because it is quite lengthy. You have amassed more than 23 million subscribers on YouTube and more than 19 million on Twitch, including millions of more across other platforms. You were named Forbes Top Creator in 2023, and you were on the 30 Under 30 list in 2019 for gaming. You are part of Game Square Holding, and adding to your resume, you have co-founded a new beverage brand called Nutcase. Now, let's kick off for what you're most well known for, which is Fortnite. You literally have skin in the game. So tell me a little bit about the evolution of this game and how it impacted your career specifically.
All right. Yeah, so Fortnite's been around for I think almost like 6 years now. And like I've been streaming for about like 10 or 11, maybe even 12 years. I honestly don't know anymore. It's all starting to blur together. But yeah, no, Fortnite was probably one of the most polished battle royale games to come out ever, right after H1Z1 and PUBG, which are games that I also used to stream. And I streamed Halo and Destiny before that and a bunch of other games leading up to, Fortnite. But Fortnite was just, dude, they just did everything right. They just did everything right with how pretty the game looked, how simple it was. It was free to play, and it was just so much fun. All right, and it caught fire. And obviously it just continued to blow up and take off for, the next 2 to 3 years, just not, showing absolutely no signs of slowing down. I was blessed to be in the position that I was in when Fortnite started to take off.
And one of your biggest videos is when you played Fortnite with Drake, the rapper. Tell me a little bit about that experience.
Absolutely. I love telling the story. The story will never get old. It was like probably like I don't even remember the date. It was a year. It was pretty far along into Fortnite. I was averaging anywhere from like 90 to 100,000 viewers, like at any time. Just whenever I went live, it would just shoot up super quick. And one day I was playing, I was just streaming, chilling, just trying to get clips and get a bunch of wins. And someone in my chat was just like, "Hey, you know." I don't even know how this happens, by the way. Like, I don't even know how people found this out, but they're like, "Hey, man, like Champagne Poppy follows you on Instagram." Um, and I was like, "Who's Champagne Poppy?" Right? Because like I was still super new. Like I wasn't listening to. Obviously, I knew of Drake, loved his music, but like I didn't know that was one of his aliases and obviously his Instagram username. So ended up checking it out. It was Drake. We ended up DMing each other and just like, "Hey," he's like, "Hey, man, we got to run sometime." I'm sitting here like, yeah, whenever, just hit me up." And it actually ended up being like a pretty long process. Like I think a couple of weeks of like trying to figure out like when we were going to play. We tried to schedule it a couple of times. But he has, there's this thing called rap time. And rappers are definitely on there. It might be all artists, but I've been in the industry and I've heard that it's called rap time where they kind of just show up and do what they want when they want. So and also because, they're super busy. So he was also in the middle of recording an album. So he missed like the first one because he stayed late at his studio. Then he tried to bring his setup to his studio and still ended up running late or whatever. So, and then randomly one night, I just finished a 2-a-day stream. I think I streamed like 10 hours in the morning from like 6 to 4 or something like that. And then streamed like, took like a 30-minute break, went back live from like 4 to 8. And then I get off, I'm on my couch and I get a DM and he's like, "Hey man, I'm on, let's play." So naturally, I immediately fired the stream back up, and the rest is history.
Well, that's really impressive. I mean, you've played games with many, many people, and we'll get to that a little bit more later. But you've worked with a lot of brands. Obviously, Fortnite, you have your own skins, Red Bull. And in a world where we have so many companies who are looking to work with content creators, what do you think is your number one advice to those companies who want to reach out or they're trying to connect with a creator who makes sense for their brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's best when it happens naturally, which is obviously difficult because if you're a brand and there isn't a top creator out there who just naturally uses your product and enjoys, you know, using what you have to offer, there does obviously need to be an introduction and, oh, try this out. So for me with Red Bull, like I was always drinking Red Bull. I've always been a fan of Red Bull, like not just the drink, but also, like what they do as a company, and their brand, right? It was just very like pristine, high tier. And it was a no-brainer when obviously like things finally worked out with us. But yeah, like I would say like leave it up to your PR team, not your PR team, like the people who are like, I feel like every studio nowadays and every company, they have like that young generation of like pop culture, like, employees that are just aware of, the gaming space and the YouTube space and the content creator space. I mean, it's definitely, like the social media team, right? I think it requires a lot of communication and like almost research from that social team to go out and look for influencers that are already naturally using their product. Because truly that is always going to be the most authentic, real experience. And when the person who already uses your product is now like obviously, being partnered and sponsored, is not being paid to promote it. It's just very natural. And like I think in a day where people can now really tell when people are faking, it's important for the authenticity to shine through with partnerships.
Yeah, speaking about that authenticity element, you said you can't quite remember. I actually looked up today when your first video was. It was 12 years ago. And obviously, you have millions of subscribers across multiple platforms. How do you keep that authenticity and that engagement with your audience, especially as a streamer who has a comment section? I was watching your video last night, and I believe your wife was in your comment section, even engaging with people. So, how do you keep that authenticity and keep engaging with your masses, even though you have millions of them?
Yeah. I think streaming is always going to be the most hands-on with your audience and your viewership. Because it's live, like you're getting this live reaction to stuff that's happening in front of you, like whatever you're playing and streaming. And like that alone is um it's just easy to riff off of, like to riff off of, kind of like uh yeah, I mean, and I've done it for so long that like streaming, when I think of authenticity as a streamer, I think of like it is very difficult um to hide your true nature the longer that you are on stream. I think obviously there are some exceptions, but I think that for me personally, it is very easy to continue to be authentic with my viewers and with my streams and with my content, because like people think I'm playing a character. Like I'm not. Like Ninja is Tyler, if that makes sense, right? Like I'm not pretending to be somebody when I stream and when I make this content. I never have my entire life. I've always been just this over the top, super high energy, eccentric psycho that loves video games and can do impressions, right? Like, and I've always done that, and I've always continued to do that. So for me, like finding the authenticity is just like continuing to be me, um, who I've always been. So
Absolutely. And I mean, you said you've been doing this for a very long time. And another creator I recently spoke to is Jacksepticeye, who contemplated leaving the platform, right, of YouTube. And there's been a lot of gaming creators who have really struggled with digital content creation in recent years, some of them even retiring. So, what keeps you motivated in staying in this field and staying in the game?
that's a great question, Sarah. Thank you. I love playing video games still, and I do truly love. I mean, you mentioned it, and it's one of the things that actually keeps me coming back, and like truly enjoying what I do is like my wife, when she was like in the chat, like just typing, like I get such a huge dopamine boost when I see like my friends and my family and like my longtime viewers and subscribers as well. So like my moderators, the people I work with, like when they're in the stream and they're like being active, it like kind of just like reminds me, why I do what I do. It's like to entertain and to I've met these people through this space. And it makes me want to keep going and keep streaming. Like, one of my best buds is Tim the Tatman, and he'll pop in the chat every once in a while, and like my entire day is made when I see one of my friends even just comment like you're an idiot or something. Like I get the just knowing that they're watching my stream in the morning at 9 a.m., 8 a.m. Like it's just a great way to start the day.
So, before we jump to your beverage brand, you are not new to entrepreneurial efforts, right? You are a part of Game Square, and I just want to start by you telling me a little bit about this company and its mission.
I think the goal is to and my give me a minute. The goal is to just kind of take so with esports in general, forever, it has always been about outsourcing and trying to get, like there's never been like a do it yourself, like everything in one spot. And that has been one of the biggest issues for companies, like losing money to go out and outsource to, a million different companies to try to get a singular event to like take place. And I think that GameSquare's mission is to have an all-in-one, like you come here, it's a one-stop shop, right? They can handle any type of event. They have venues, they have, the casters, they have everything that you possibly could need, right? All in one space. So it's going to it's just to save as much money as possible, and to also like the culture in Game Square is very like it's just filled with people that have been in the space for a very long time, and also a lot of gamers. And I think that when you have these intelligent employees working together as well, like people that understand the gaming space in an authentic way, it's irreplaceable. And I think that in a lot of other companies surrounding esports and surrounding gaming, surrounding streaming, there are a lot of people that like they get their jobs because they have experience in, what they do, but not in the gaming space. And sometimes it doesn't translate very well. And in Game Square, I think that the mission is to have that authenticity everywhere and to have that one-stop shop. So personally working with them, it's been interesting, and it's been a lot of learning, right? Because this is probably the most business like role I've ever had in a company.
Absolutely. But I'm curious because this is something that's been blowing up. Esports is, I feel like I'm seeing things like high schools even having esports teams, right? We're seeing different development or software development around esports in colleges. I mean, this is such a field that's exploding. So, what do you think is going to happen next? What is the next big thing that maybe investors in this field need to be keeping an eye out for?
That's an interesting question. I think it's very difficult to predict the future of what to look out for, especially since the space is just changing so much. Like the good news is that esports is not going away, which is like competitive, I'll call it competitive gaming because I always thought esports was cringe. Um, but like competitive gaming is never going away at a high level, right? Like the League of Legends tournaments, Valorant, Dota, like the numbers that these companies and these games pull and like their championship and worlds tournaments and matches is astonishing. Um, Streaming, on the other hand, is so volatile right now. It is all over the place, right? Like the highs and lows of streaming over these last 5 years, the landscape has changed dramatically, where your number one streamers were all gamers. And now you're looking at like super hybrids and IRL content creators where like there are, so, and I don't know. I don't know what would be next. Like I've always said that the next big thing in gaming, it has to be VR. Because I just feel like gaming is like, there's almost nothing left to accomplish, in my opinion, in like the current world of gaming right now, right? Like the games can only get so realistic from like a gameplay standpoint until you actually like kind of like put yourself into the game. So like that's what I predicted in the next like 5 to 10 years, because I just right now VR is very like very limited, and I think that is the next giant step in gaming.
I think the VR conversation is so interesting to me because it's been a while. It's been around for a while. I mean, I remember being in college, which was longer ago than I care to admit, and having people have VR sets, and yet we thought this was going to be something that was going to be more institutionalized by this point, and it's not. So, you say the next thing is VR. What would you like to see come out of future VR games?
I think just like a super realistic like shoot, like even Fortnite, if for like for as an example, if like Fortnite was done well with like graphics and like the aiming, because like that's one of the issues, right? Is like it's just clunky. It feels clunky. And I just think that it'll take a very it's just like it's like the Xbox. Let me like compare this to the Xbox. So like back in the day, like people thought the Xbox was incredibly expensive. It was. And there was a game, Halo, that literally was so good that it made people literally buy the entire console just to play that one game. We call it like a console seller. Like, right? Like you will it is so good people will literally buy the console just to play this one game. And unfortunately, like I just don't think that'll ever happen in VR until there's a company that's willing to take a hit where they either have a free to play game and they invest hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into this game to make it hyper realistic, right? And like set the bar to a whole new level. Or, there needs to be a game so good that people are willing to spend what you want to spend or what you need to spend to buy a VR headset to begin with, right? And like the price point is very, very high. So it already has a huge threshold, right? Or a huge like barrier to get into a family's home in the world right now. So the price needs to come down, like significantly, so that the entry point is very low, and a lot of people start to get VR headsets, and it becomes the norm. Or there's a game so good and so realistic and it's only on VR. By the way, that would have to be another huge selling point, that like everyone is buying this headset and buying a VR headset to literally play this game. So who knows? There could be a game that's been being worked on over the last 5 years. Who knows? It could not happen for another 5 or 10 years. But I'm ready for it whenever that is.
And while I have you on the topic, there's so many of these monopolizing conversations that we have about certain games obviously being owned by a certain company that you only can play it on one platform, right? So if I want to play Animal Crossing, like I likely only have to get it on Switch, right? Or whatever game it is, you can only get it on that one. So then you end up purchasing, right, all of these different consoles. But we're seeing that obviously some of these big companies are buying some of these game developers. And so how do you see that playing out? What is the value of indie game makers at this point?
I think that's a great question. Again, by the way, I don't think indie game developers should be discouraged at all. In fact, I think that they should be more encouraged than anything. You look at these companies recently, these games that came out over the last couple of years, by the way, that have completely taken the world by storm. And like Pal World, like off the top of my head, Chain Together, which just came out, Only Up, which was like a $10 game on Steam, Pal World, and then Among Us. And there's definitely more games in here, but these are just the ones that I've witnessed just explode and go viral and be from indie game companies that were. I throw Fall Guys in there too, but I think Fall Guys had a little bit more. It might have been from a main company, like a major video game company, but I'm not sure. But like these games that sold millions of copies in a week, right? And from an indie dev, like they could probably retire. I imagine. I don't know the financials behind that, like how much it costs and how many, but like I imagine I think indie game company, right, or indie dev company, I think group of 5 or 10 people maybe spend like 100K on the game, right, and then just sold millions of copies. I imagine like they're set. So these types of like games that just spread like wildfire, they're being created by indie companies for and like it's so I personally don't mind. Like it makes sense. It's always been around. Like you have Call of Duty that used to, what I feel like it always used to be PlayStation, but like Xbox was Halo, Final Fantasy was PlayStation, and there's always going to be. I personally think there's always going to be like exclusivity with a specific game on a specific console. I mean, my wife right now is playing Animal Crossing on the Switch, and like that was a no-brainer. The Switch is also just an incredible. I mean, all these consoles are incredible, right? So like. They might hook you to buy one game, but at the end of the day, I think every single console right now is worth it. But yeah, it's not going away. Indie game companies, to summarize, it's not going away. And indie game companies should be excited more than ever because they just need to create an authentic, real experience that like is just great for streamers. Because that's also how it just spreads like absolute wildfire, right? Like very high clippable moments, super entertaining, and even the content. Like I beat Chained Up and Only Up. A lot of people beat these games in like a day, but it didn't matter, right? They still went crazy, they still went viral, and they still sold millions of copies. So
So yeah, I mean, I bought my Switch because I wanted to play, Legend of Zelda, and you
heck
can
yeah,
only do
Legend
that
of
with a
Zelda, right?
Switch.
For Nintendo, always.
Yes, of course. So finally, let's talk about Nutcase, which is your new beverage brand. You were brought in by your fellow poker friend, Phil Hellmuth, and now you're in the game with Joel Wynand. And so just tell me a little bit about why somebody needs this in their fridge. What makes it different from any other beverage they'll have?
It's it's delicious, and there's nothing like super artificial in it, or artificial at all for that matter. I know a lot of people right now are on their health kick in the world. I mean, like it's dairy is I feel like as people get older in general, their tolerance to dairy just goes down. As well as gluten. I feel like there's like a gluten pandemic in the States. But like me personally, I have a high sensitivity to gluten, which is super unfortunate because in my opinion, the best like all the best meals are between two pieces of bread. Um, and gluten isn't quite there yet. Gluten-free stuff rather. But it's gluten-free, dairy-free, has a high shelf life. I think it lasts up to a year because it doesn't have those two ingredients in it. And it's just delicious. So like give it a try.
Well, what got you onto this project? At Forbes, we're all about pivoting and trying new things and taking risks. And so, obviously, you're in the gaming space, you have experience in the gaming space. What takes you to the beverage line, to the food and drink line?
I think the two things for me that made me super excited to try to be a part of Nutcase were number one, it was delicious. And I have one of the biggest sweet tooths in the world. Like that was like the no-brainer. Especially in the drink space, food and beverage, like God knows how much Shark Tank I've watched. They all unanimously agree on the one thing that if it tastes like shit, it's going nowhere, right? Like, it tasted absolutely phenomenal. I loved it, and that was like deal number one, rule number one. And the second was, and this is what Joelle kind of like hit me with, and she's like, Tyler, like the space is so, like the chocolate milk space is just so small, like in terms of competition, right? Like I think of Nesquik, and you think of YooHoo as like the only like you think chocolate milk on the go, like you think of those two things. And when you look at the quality of those ingredients and compared to the quality of ours, like I was like, I think this has just a real shot to just blow up because it's a better tasting, better for you option. And everyone might be tired of just powdered chocolate, right? Like that has a bunch of like artificial sweeteners and flavors.
Absolutely. As somebody who loves ice cream and dairy
Die hard
is,
ice cream, like a tub a night if I could.
yeah, and dairy as I'm getting older is getting rougher and rougher. And so I hear you, I get it. But I mean, what business experiences have you had so far with Nutcase that maybe you've learned a lot from, right? This is a big pivot for you. So this is a new space. What have you learned from? What mistakes have you even made here in the first couple of months?
So luckily, I can confidently say no mistakes besides potentially leaking one of our flavors early, which I think actually ended up being okay. Um, but I really haven't had. I've been more of like the brainstorming side of like. Let me kind of like rephrase this. I truly think that yes, this is a huge pivot to what I do, right? Like I'm a streamer, I play video games, I make content, right? But a lot of what I've already been doing or what I've been doing for Nutcase has kind of literally been like in that avenue, right? Like critical thinking, coming up with ideas to advertise it, um, and like being thoughtful in like events and ways to promote it on stream. And like in terms of like execution, right? For like the path of what we're doing, like where we're starting, like that level of business is really been all Joelle, right? Like she she sourced where the the factory is, right, where we're going to be making it, where what's coming from. She made the ingredients to begin with as well, and the product. And also has been dealing with a lot of like the back end of like, hey, we're only online right now. Obviously now a couple months later, we're in GoPuff and we're in some select stores, but like it has been the strategy and execution of how we're going to expand and how quickly we're going to expand. It's really been all Joelle. So I'm just happy that she's had that like on lockdown pretty much since we started.
So, what's the next big project for you? What can people look out for? Anything big on the horizon?
Hmm.
You're trying not to leak another flavor, huh?
No, a new flavor wouldn't have been big enough for that question. I mean, so one of the cool things about I mean, honestly, it is all Nutcase, truly. Like I think this thing can go to the moon, and I'm really excited about it. And I think the way like just it's very like poker family infused like company in the sense of like Phil Hellmuth invested, obviously. He brought me into it. I love poker. There are a lot of other, I think, investors. Joelle loves poker. Joelle's husband loves poker. And like, so for me, we're like, a lot of our advertising is going to be through like high quality, like high profile, like poker games. We've already done a Nutcase poker cash game once, and we have intentions of doing that and continuing to do that throughout, the next couple, I mean, throughout forever, I think. And like that type of content for me to go from playing video games to now kind of leaning a little bit more into the poker world, it's very exciting. It's a lot of fun. It's new, it's fresh. And, there are a lot of great conversations and great content that can happen at a poker table when you're sitting there shooting the shit with 8 or 9 guys and girls that you just enjoy, like, and it's like you're happy to be there, and you have some just crazy characters. So I would say look forward to more like poker style events from me in the future.
Absolutely. Now, before I let you go, I have some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Born ready.
Awesome. So, what game do you wish you could play for the first time again?
Woo! Legend of Legaia.
Okay. Who's someone you haven't played games with that you would want to?
These are too rapid fire for me. Someone that I've wanted to play games with Queso.
Okay.
Who's a streamer, up and coming streamer, amazing.
What's something you will always splurge on?
Splurge on food.
Excellent choice. You're a big sports fan, and we love talking about sports betting at Forbes. So, what teams do you have your money on this year?
I have the Lions winning over 9 games, I think is what their line is set at, 9.5. The Lions, and then I haven't really done any crazy research yet into like the NHL for next year, obviously in the NBA. So I like the Lions, and I actually like the Vikings like under like I think their line is at 4.5 wins or 5 wins or 6. So I like that too. They're sort of the regular season wins. Those are like my 2 bets that I have in right now.
Wonderful. Now, obviously, you and I are both from the Midwest. Women's sports has been massive this year. Have you been watching anything?
Yes, I've been watching the Fever. I've been watching a lot of Caitlin Clark highlights. I have not been watching any of their live games because I don't have their games on my subscription yet. But I have been absolutely loving the Reese and Caitlin Clark hype. It's been very drama filled, which I think is just only doing. It's only gonna be helping spread the WNBA. So it's actually been really exciting. And it's funny you mentioned that too, because my brother, I did a sports show with my brother earlier today. And he was literally wearing a WNBA shirt as well. He's a huge fan of the sport and of the league, and also like coaches women's basketball in high school. So he's a huge fan.
Huge fan. Gotta keep it in the family. Gotta get everyone excited for Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. So thank you so much, Tyler, for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. Great questions. This was a lot of fun.